Okay, going live.
All right.
Hello, welcome to today's session. This is the fifth part of our series on Azure for AWS developers. Today we're talking about message-based solutions, and I will turn this over to Rafiq Wayani, who will speak with a lot of passion about this subject. And over to you, Rafiq. Thank you.
Hi guys, how are you? I am really excited to be here discussing message-based solutions with you. I'm going to be talking to you about Service Bus, the queues and topics within Service Bus, storage queues from storage accounts, and then I'm going to conclude. And really, before I get started, I want to give you a little bit of a framework to work off of. And I want to use this as a little guide, this gobbledygook. Back in the day, and I'm not going to say when because I'm going to age myself, the concept of messaging was only first in, first out, first in, last out, last in, first out. Remember that? When we are talking about messages, it used to be this whole FIFO, first in, first out, right? First in, last out, FILO, or last in, first out, LIFO. Now, all of these messaging models were talking about one message going in and one message coming back. Now, that message that was going in perhaps may be going in from a client and coming back from a server. There's a big problem with this whole model, if you will, big problem with this whole model. And that is that messages going from the client and coming back from the server can encounter issues, right? So what I want to tell you, as far as these issues are concerned, there are a few things that you need to know about with regards to messaging issues. And that is that messages, as they're going from the client to the server and then back from the server, this is one message, right? One message sent, one message received. That is not real life. And even if that was real life, what are the chances that this message isn't going to get interrupted when it's sent, and this message wasn't going to get interrupted when it's received? Let me replace the client server to give you a little bit of a better scope, if you will. Let's replace this client method, or this client meaning, if you will, and turn that into phones, right? Let's say this is a phone. And let's say this is a message app, you know, your text messaging app, SMS messages on your phone. Do you send 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 messages at a time? Well, yes, I certainly do. You do too. You send that message to some source, right? The server, whatever that server is. And you want that message to be received by whoever is subscribing or listening, if you will, for your message, right? You're talking about the destination. If this right here is the source of the message, and this is the destination of the message, when you send the message needs to be retrieved by the destination. And this whole destination, in the case of phones, is determined by the lovely phone number that you're sending it to, right? And you will also receive a confirmation. Okay? You're also going to receive a confirmation that says, yes, I received your message, and basically everything is done. But you don't send one message at a time. Maybe you're typing and entering and typing and entering and typing and entering, and you're sending 10, 12, 15, 20 messages. What happens when you multiply your phone, your number, as far as clients go, to hundreds of thousands or millions of phones, millions of people that are trying to send messages, of course, to millions upon millions of customers located everywhere in every part of the world? You don't just send messages to people that are in your network. You are sending text messages everywhere. Can you imagine if that process of sending text messages was a first in, first out, last in, first out, first in, last out. It doesn't work that way. You cannot send one message expecting for that one message to be received by the other entity and then have that one message send a response back. That whole environment really doesn't work today. You know what I mean? So really, if you think about it, the messaging environment today really doesn't work that way. Okay? You have to have a system that is capable of processing many messages and sending and receiving many messages. And what I mean by many messages is that there has to be some level of reliability in those messages. Okay? There has to be some level of durability in those messages as well. And it has to be spread across nationally, geographically, wherever it's located, and wherever your destination happens to be. Let me give you a little bit of a better scenario with these so that you understand the concept of what I am talking about. The magic here that Azure provides, okay, if you put Azure in the middle and you put Azure Service Bus in the middle here, and we will say that this is going to serve as our black box. You know what I mean by black box? Whatever goes on in there. And you take your client, you take your, I should really just say, you take your source, the message sender. You take your destination, the message receiver. And the source and destination are able to communicate. Regardless of how many sources there are, it really does not make any difference how many sources there are, and it doesn't make any difference how many destinations there are. This sounds kind of vague, doesn't it? This whole source and destination. If you really think about it, the source can be your SMS text messages, and the destination can be the individual that is receiving your text messages, the person that is receiving them, the person that is sending them. Okay? This black box over here, Azure Service Bus, is responsible for processing those messages, making sure that they get sent, processed in a reliable manner. You can trust that when you send a message from the source, that it will be received by the destination, and it doesn't matter if those messages are 1 or 2, or if they're 10 or 20, or if they're hundreds of thousands, or if they're millions. Okay. What kind of messages are we talking about? Right? And let me show you. Let me show you a environment here. I am going to go over to my Azure Service Bus. Okay. You can create an Azure Service Bus very easily by clicking on it and then simply creating it, specifying the resource group that is going to go in, specifying the name of the bus, specifying which region you want to belong to, right? Specifying the pricing tier. I selected the standard pricing tier, right? And I'm going to click review and create, and basically I created it so that we don't have to wait for it, all right? But this is all that needs to be done to create the service bus. Right? So in my case, I created my Azure Service Bus. And inside of the service bus, I have the concept of queues right here and topics. Okay? I have a queue that I created, demo queue, and I have a topic that I created, demo topic. What's the difference? Queue will send a point-to-point type messages, one message to one queue. Queue is a single thread, and I'll show you the image of that so you can see what I'm talking about. Topic allows you to send multiple messages to multiple receivers. Queue allows you to send a message to a receiver. Okay, so let me show you what this looks like in the concept here. Take a look right here. Right? So this right here is a topic example. Okay? This right here is a topic example. This whole thing is a topic. The sender is sending messages and multiple receivers are receiving the message sent by the sender. You think to yourself, well, why would I need multiple receivers, right? Well, here's the thing. One sender, this can be an application. Okay? And the messages can be parsed in here. The message may be really long and the message may be parsed for the individual receiver. Maybe this receiver wants the PO portion. Maybe this receiver wants the sales order portion. And maybe this receiver just wants the totals out of the same messages. So this right over here can be a distribution process. Okay? Also, if you're not thinking about that, each receiver can be a different customer. Maybe the same message and different parts of the same message need to go to different customers, and you can send the entire stack at the same time. That's topic. Sender is sending basically multiple messages at the same time, which is very different than the sender receiver in the terms of a queue. Okay. So you have a message queue, and queue, as you can see, and queue is sending a message. Right. A queue sending a message, and then the receiver is receiving it. Okay. And you can send multiple messages. Yeah, these would be examples of multiple messages, and the receiver receiving those messages. The great part about this is that the receiver does not have to be listening for these messages to be retrieved. The queue will hold the message until the receiver is ready to receive them. Okay, and that can be for a bunch of reasons. The holding pattern can be for a whole host of reasons. One reason may be is because the message is not ready to be processed by the receiver. What does that even mean? Well, have you ever had a file that is being processed, and the processing of that file, processing of that file takes several hours. And once the file processing is done, only then can you update something and then process the message, if you will. Okay. In the meantime, messages can be coming in and the queue can hold them. And you can also be sure that because the receiver does not rely on the sender to send the message at the same time it's ready to be received, that takes care of the reliability. And these queues can be geo-redundant, okay? Which means that the receiving party, the sending party can be in LA and the receiving party can be in Miami. It just doesn't matter, okay? Or the receiving party can be located in other places as well. It doesn't matter. So that's a very big thing. I want to also show you a little bit of overview of the service bus, as show here. So here is the application, sending it, okay? The cloud, as I was telling you, and then there's some receiver that is receiving the message, and you've got a service bus queue that is accessing it, right? You have some kind of an internet accessible endpoint, right? That is able to send and receive messages, and these endpoints are right into the Azure cloud so that you can send and receive messages. Now, let me show you something else so that you can see how these get set up. I want to show you how these get set up. Inside of Visual Studio, I've got some projects that I've built. I've got a project that I built that is responsible for sending. And notice right over here, this is my connect string for the service bus. And on my service bus, right over here, shared access policies. Okay. And I go to my bus. Okay. And I'm able to gain access to my keys, right? My connection. See that primary connection string? That's what I grabbed. That connection string is what I need to gain access to my service bus right here. Once I have access to my service bus, I essentially will have access to the topics and queues inside of it. Okay, once I have access to the service bus, I will have access to topics and queues that I have inside of it. Okay? The only way that won't happen is if I go to the queue and I have access restrictions on my queue, who can gain access to that queue within that service bus? That's access control inside of IAM, and that's also true, of course, of my topic as well. I go over to the topic, I click on the topic, I select access control, and then I decide who will have access to that. Okay. Then I have, if you haven't worked with Visual Studio inside of Azure, you need a way to gain access to Azure artifacts so that you can have access to the Azure Service Bus, the library that you need to install so that inside of your Visual Studio environment, so that you can gain access to the Service Bus. As I was describing, you need these endpoints, right? I said you need these endpoints. Okay, so this in code, the way you have access to these endpoints is if you have, well, what? If you have access to Azure. If both of the endpoints have access to Azure. If the client or the sender and the receiver doesn't have access to Azure, the endpoints are kind of dead in the water. The whole thing is being processed by the Azure cloud. So when I show you here, inside of Azure DevOps, I created if you don't have Azure DevOps, it's perfectly fine. You can start a free trial. It's not a problem at all. You can create a project in Azure DevOps. I created a simple project in Azure DevOps, called it SB Example. You can click on that project once you create it. You can click on artifacts. Once you click on artifacts, you click on create feed and you specify the feed that you're going to create. Once you specify the feed that you're going to create, it will provide you with a URL. Okay, so when you click on connect to the feed.net, it will give you the package sources so that you can, in Visual Studio, okay, connect to the feed. Let me go back. Connect to the feed in Visual Studio. And you look right here, see the source right here? That source will give you access to the .NET Azure feed for Visual Studio. Now, what ends up happening with that is if you go to, in Visual Studio, if you go to Tools and you go to NuGet Package Manager, you get Package Manager Settings, you go over to Package Sources, you add package sources, you specify what the name of your feed is, my feed, and you specify that source that I showed you right here, this source right there. And that source will essentially give you access to the Azure environment. Once you have that Azure source, as you subscribe to the feed, you can label it whatever you want. I labeled mine Azure, so I already have that. It's at that point that you'll be able to gain access to Azure Messaging Service Bus. It's at that point that you'll be able to go over, and let me show you what I mean by that. If I just grab this code, if I just do a copy of this code, I create and I add a new solution. I do an add and I do new project, not solution, new project, and I do a console application and I do a next, and I'm going to do a service bus. I'm a 01, and I'm going to create this project. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to grab this whole thing and paste it. Now watch, it doesn't understand Azure Messaging Service Bus, right? You need to actually go over to your project, go over to manage NuGet packages, go over to browse, go over to Azure service bus, Azure service bus, like that. Now, it's not going to find this unless you have your package source, which is what I told you need to get from, in this case, from the feed that I connected. It needs this to be part of the NuGet source. And you grab it from the NuGet source, you add it to your project, and it's only then that it knows you're able to connect to your package and to your application. So you essentially, this Azure Messaging Service Bus, you right-click on it, you go to Manage NuGet Packages, you go over to Browse, and you go Azure Messaging Service Bus, like that. You click on it, you click Install, and this is going to connect. You click Accept, and it will install. And it's after that point that the curly lines, if you will, the curly error messages will go away, because now it's able to connect, and you're actually able to install. So remember that little piece, all right? So I'm going to remove this because I don't really need this. I already got my pieces of the puzzle dirty. No, don't save it. Okay, so what I have here is I have a queue. I've got this demo topic. I've got my topic in this case over here, and I've got my queue over here. There's my demo queue right there. This is my endpoint. That endpoint comes from my service bus, shared access key, clicking on the access key, and it comes from that connect string right there, that primary connect string right there is my endpoint. So I basically copied that and pasted it, if you will, right there, right? And then I told it, once you connected the service bus, my queue is labeled that, which is the case. I'm going to go over to my queue. Where is it? Here. I'm going to go over to my queue, and the name of my queue is demo queue. See it? Now, if I go to Service Bus Explorer and I go to send, and I'm going to say this is a text, and I'm going to type the message. This is my first message in the queue, and I'm going to send the message. Okay, see it? Message sent. I'm going to go over here to peek. Okay, I'm going to refresh this. I'm going to peek. Hello. I'm going to didn't send it. Okay. Peek. Let's go. Ah, I know why. It's because I've got the receive application running. I'll share with you what I mean right here. I've got an application running that is receiving messages right here. See it? This is my first message in the queue, and I'll show you where this application is and what it's doing. I was wondering what happened. So if I go over here, let me show you. Look right here. I'm going to do my second message from the queue. Send. Look right here. Look, see it? My second message from the queue. So that's my application receiving the message off of that queue. If I close this, if I close the get queue app, okay, and I send it manually, this is my third message in the queue. I send it. Go to peek it. There's one message that hasn't been received. I do a peek. I click on the message, and I can see, if I peek, I'll see what my message is right there. See it? Okay. And if I go over to receive, and I receive the message, and I say yes, there's the message right there. There's the message right there. So I can peek the message without receiving it, because I can take a look and see what the message is without having received it. Receive means the queue's been emptied out. Okay. So you see the active messages right here, active messages, and you see the. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a dozen messages, right? So I'm going to go over to my send to queue response project here, and I'm going to run send to queue right here. I think I have this already, and I'll share with you where that is. Here it is. My send to queue right there. Okay, so I just sent 12 messages. Now the 12 messages that I sent are basically saying right over here, and it's going to say I just purchased some, and then I'm randomizing shoes, jeans, t-shirt, phone, whatever. And it's just going to say I purchased, whatever. It's going to be shoes or jeans or t-shirt or phone, cake or coffee or tree or whatever. So I'm going to go over to my message. I'm going to go over to peek. Notice 12 messages, right? I do a peek. Click on a message. Look here. See it? I just purchased some eggs. Go to this one. Purchase a t-shirt. See it? Go over here. Purchase some pie. See it? Purchase some tree. Right? Right? Purchase some, leather and so on. Yeah. So that kind, right? All right. So here I've got messages that I just sent using my code. I can also, let me go over here. Let me show you. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see clearly. I am, what am I doing here? Okay, so I'm connecting. It's my connect string and my queue. My queue, my connect string that I showed you, just initializing some vars. Okay, here I am, service bus client, using the connect string to the queue name. Okay, queue within the connection, right? And then I am creating an array of products. I'm initializing a random object, and then I'm grabbing, an integer of between 1 and 12, so that I get a random product out of these 12 products, so that when I say I just purchased some, I get a different item each time. And then I am adding the message, right over here. I'm adding the message. All right, and if there was a problem with trying to add, it'll just give a too large to fit, and then the message is essentially being sent. Okay, when I get the queue, I'm still connecting to the same endpoint, same queue. Okay, and then I am essentially grabbing Service Bus Connect, creating a processor, and then I'm basically grabbing the queue, start processing, waiting for it, and then essentially writing the message as it's coming in. Right, so that is getting it. So if I go over to my messages, I've got 12 messages right now, as you can see. Yeah, if I'm going to go right here to my receive queue, I'm going to receive, that's sending to the queue, and that is, I'm going to receive from a queue, not send. I'm going to receive from a queue. And that is going to be right here, get queue, do a get queue. Okay, there it is, 12, the 12 messages that I just retrieved. When I go back into my service bus, go to my queue and do a refresh, notice all the messages are gone because they have all been received. Okay, so that's the message sending, receiving. The other thing that I can do is I can also send to a topic, right? I can also send to a topic. Let me go back over here, go over to topic, click on topic. Okay, there are no messages right now in the topic. I'm going to go right here and I'm going to send to topic right there. Okay, it's going to send 12 messages to the topic. If I go back to the topic, and that, instead of connecting to the queue, I'm just connecting to the topic. Right? Instead of connecting to the queue, I'm connecting to the topic. Right? And my topic is being received. That's why right here, I didn't see it in here. Let me do it again. Let me send it to the topic. Go back to my messages and refresh. Okay. As the topic's coming in, my subscription. Okay, so underneath the topic, there's a subscription. See it? 12 messages in the subscription. Okay, topics have subscriptions. Within a topic, there can be one or more subscriptions. Within a service bus, there can be one or more queues and topics. Within a topic, there can be one or more subscriptions, depending on who's getting the messages. And then if I go over here and I specify get topic, go to my get topic. Again, I'm connecting to the topic, demo topic within my queue, within my service bus, demo topic. Go right here, specify my demo topic right there. That's what I'm listening on. Okay. So right now, this subscription has 12 messages, 12 active messages right here. See them? Okay. So if I go to Service Bus Explorer, I can see 12 messages. So if I go to Peak and I click on Peak, I'll see the 12 messages. And if I click on them, I'll be able to see it. I purchased some cake, right? I purchased some pie. I purchased an iPhone. You see them? I purchased a tree. See it over here? Okay. I purchased some phone. I purchased leather, right? And I can clear this out. Okay, I can clear this out by retrieving all of the messages at the same time. So I'm going to get the topic. I'm going to run the get topic. Get topic. Run that. And here they are. T-shirt, tree, eggs, pie, everything that I grabbed. And I got all of the topics that I retrieved. So now when I go back to Azure and I do a refresh, okay, all the messages are gone. There are no more messages remaining to be received, right? None. Right? 0 messages. So that's topic. That is queue. That is service bus. Let me show you storage queues because they are really awesome too. Let me go over, click home, storage accounts, and my storage account. And I have, notice, I have containers, right, which are my folders. But instead of containers, I can use storage queues. Okay, instead of containers, I can use storage queues. So if I go over to queue, I created a queue called Rafiq queue. That sounds funny. And I can basically submit to a storage queue. Instead of submitting to a message queue, I can store them if I so want, utilizing a storage account in the storage environment. And same deal, I can go to Access and Identity and Access Manager, IAM, and I can granularly provide permissions to determine who will and won't have access to this storage queue. All right, so let me start submitting something to this storage queue, and let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to go over to storage queue. Okay, same deal. So I've got endpoints in my queue, right? Endpoints in my queue. How is that for the storage queue? Well, if I go over to Azure, go over to my storage account, go over to go over to my store, and I can grab the shared access keys from here. I can grab the my permissions right off of this so that I can gain access to my store. Right? If I grab queue and I grab a hold of the queue, see this right here? See this access policy right there? Right? I can add policies over here to determine how long and who will have access to this queue. I can limit who will be able to do it. Right? And here's a URL for the queue. Notice that. Right? So I can gain access to the queue that way. Okay? I can add policies. Okay, so queue and the way I access it. And if I go to the storage account, I'm able to gain access to the storage account utilizing my permissions, utilizing how my storage account is going to work. I can click on access keys, grab if I do a show keys right here, when I go to access keys on the storage account, I can grab this key right here, and that will become my way of gaining access to everything in the storage account, the containers, the file shares, the queues, and the tables. Based on the access keys will be based on basically whatever permissions I've assigned whomever to this queue, yeah, or to this particular storage account. I'm going to click on queue, and I'm going to go over to, I did this at the command line because it was more fun that way. You'll see what I mean. I'm going to go to the queue here. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to do .NET run, and I'm going to say first. Okay, send the message, do a refresh. Look here, there's the first message in the queue. Go right here, second, and refresh. And a second message in the queue. Isn't that great? Go over and do a third. I'm just sending message to the storage queue the way I was sending it to the message queue. Right over here, do a refresh, and I've got 3 messages. Right? Press enter. Now, instead of sending messages this way, what I have done is, if I just do a .NET run, I'm going to receive messages one at a time. So here I'm receiving the first message. If I do a refresh over here, first message has been received. See that it's gone? Okay. And I'm going to get the second message. It's going to say receive second right there. Go over here, do a refresh. Second message is gone. Okay. And then finally, I'm going to receive it, the third message. Okay. Right over here, do a refresh, and the third message is gone. Isn't that neat? Nice and neat. If I go over to my code, here is my arguments that I'm sending in. I was sending first, second, and third. And if you notice right here, I'm saying if it's greater than 0, then go ahead and process this. Okay, insert the message into the bus asynchronously, and then just say sent. Right? If it's not greater than 0, in other words, I'm not sending a parameter the way I sent first, second, and third, then I want you to retrieve the message that is waiting in the queue. And the queue in this particular instance is my queue based on the connection, and the connection is my storage account, as you saw me show you. So it receives a queue, and then it just says, press enter. If I remove this, it'll grab all of them at the same time. Right? So that's where the storage queue, the service message bus, the inside of there's a queue and the topic, and exactly how these function and the way they work. Right? So let me go over to my bus. Let me go over to my queue. Let me select my queue and make sure. So I've got when I create, inside of my bus, if I create a queue, notice I've got some options. Right? Notice my options. So if I create a new queue demo, right? How big is my maximum queue size? Queue size. How long am I holding stuff? This is going to depend on the messages I'm receiving. Okay. How many messages do you want me to receive at the same time? Okay. See that? The number can range between 1 and 2,000. And then how long do you want me to hang around? Wait for the message to be around. And what is the lock duration? And then there are some options. Enable auto delete on idle queue. If the queue's been idle for X amount of time, do you want me to trash it? Idle is essentially 5 minutes. It's not being accessed for 5 minutes. If there's a duplicate message that is being sent, you want me to trash that. Okay. If there's a dead lettering, in other words, the message is just hanging there. It hasn't been trashed. Nobody's picking it up. What do you want me to do with that? I can also enable partitioning. Okay. It basically disconnects the overall throughput from any single broker so that it can be received. It allows me to grab it from multiple locations, disconnecting the message receiving subscriber publisher policy. I can enable sessions, and sessions allow me to handle unbounded sequences. So I can connect, grab the message, disconnect, connect, grab the message, disconnect. Okay. And then the forward messages, I can choose to forward message all the messages in this queue to another topic and queue. Okay, so any messages that are coming in this queue, I want to forward them. The only reason this queue may have been created is to serve as middleware for other queues. So these are some of the other options that are available within the queue. If I go over to topics and I create a topic, maximum size, and I've got some options, as you can see here. And once I create the topic to actually use it, I have to create a subscription within that topic. Remember, topics are bringing in many messages at the same time. So you have to have subscribers to be able to grab the messages, right? So you can create a subscriber, and what do you want to do? How long do you want to wait for the message to live before it is determined to be dead, as in it's just there? Or you can have an expiration date associated with that. You can move messages, right? You can lock messages. How long do you want to keep them there? So it's really quite powerful. These aspects of messaging, service message bus, queuing, storage queues, and how messages are sent and received was a key piece that was introduced inside of BizTalk Server. If you remember BizTalk Server, if you worked with it, that whole orchestration of messages, making decisions based on where the messages are coming from and where the messages are going. BizTalk Server, I think, was the first system I worked with that was around that connected disparate systems together. And the whole idea was to receive messages from disparate systems and to connect them to other systems, receive them from an ERP system and send the messages over to a point of sale system or to a database server or to a payment system or whatever the case may be. But those two systems did not have to be written, did not have to be created inside of the same environment, same code and such. They could be completely separate systems. And by means of messages and message processing, that's where this is coming into play. It's basically able to connect two systems that don't talk, and it's able to connect those together. So loosely coupled system connections, which is the way things are supposed to work so that you're not tied to one large system. Okay. So that is service bus, that is queues, that is topics, that is storage queues as well, and a little demonstration of what I put together and how that works. All right. Have any questions for me that I can help answer?
Yeah, I got a couple here.
Yep.
One is way back when you were working with artifacts in Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
I'm curious why the .NET Service Bus feed name from DevOps wasn't used. Only the URL was copied and pasted into the Visual Studio NuGet package manager. The names are chosen to prevent collisions, while a made-up name might not be. Is that?
Yeah, that is it.
Okay.
Good one. Yes.
Yeah. Step ahead of us.
And this is not the only way to gain access to this. This is the method that I chose, and it's very easy to do it this way. I create the feed and grab it, and of course these, remember, it is all based on permissions and account. I have my account connected. That's the only reason this worked. Just by copying and pasting this queue into your environment will essentially give you pause and say, hey, you need to connect to Rafiq's account to be able to gain access to this feed. So if there is security involved.
So here's another one. So sort of comment on that from the same audience member. Service bus isn't transactional. It's good for best effort only.
There is service bus that can do transactions.
Okay.
Yes, service bus can do transactions, and as a matter of fact, that's one of the ways that it can be used. And I'm going to give you this link too, right here. You'll see some of the features. That's a very good point too, about how it works with this right here. So here's the transactions, right? And it's talking about service bus and queues and how this works. So you can look at Microsoft documentation right here, and you'll be able to see what it discusses, and you can see that some common messaging scenarios, as you can see, it's talking about transactions and the concepts of queues and how it deals with it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And
then there's one that's kind of interesting that our moderator Poopan already answered, but you probably have an opinion. What are the pros and cons of service bus-based queue topic versus storage account-based queue?
So storage account-based queue, you may decide to move those or process those permanently. Remember, storage account means that you are using it for some other purposes as well. You can use storage queues to store, export, backup, save, retrieve. You don't want the messages to go away. Analytics and processing. You may choose storage queues to insert them into perhaps a database, perhaps some analytics. is conducive to more aspects, if you will, if you wanted them to use it for that purpose.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think that's all the questions we've got. I'd like to thank the audience. We will have the recording up on our YouTube channel early Monday morning. And Rafiq, any final words?
I'm really glad to have been here this whole week, providing some insight and my personal insight into this. This is something that I'm very passionate about. I really hope that came through. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to me, reach out to Matt, reach out to the Microsoft team members, and we'll be happy to respond to you, relay messages to you, provide solutions to you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yep.